let's go straight to today's business. And I'll be asking you questions as we proceed. So we're starting immediately. And today's session, sorry, is strictly going to be on the forms and systems of government, the forms and systems of government. And by the end of this lesson today, we're going to learn the difference between territorial distribution of power and what is unitary, federal, and confederal. And we're going to also look at, we're going to compare institutional power arrangement, that is presidential, parliamentary, and semi-presidential. Of course, you're not going to see them like, we're not going to talk about what is presidential, what is parliamentary, but you will be able to understand this core concept as we proceed. Now, we're also going to classify political regimes along the spectrum from liberal democracy to autocracy. Liberal democracy is where people are exercising their right in choosing their leader and having some, some space to operate with some level of, freedom. But then autocracy, we know what it means and everything. We're going to look at that one too. And we're also going to do what we call, we're going to analyze contemporary hybrid regimes. That is, regimes that focus on what? Competitive authoritarianism and democratic backsliding. We're going to look at all of them by the time we finish. So I'm going to go a bit faster. Now, so we're starting with the territorial distribution of power. What is territory? A territory is a designated piece of what? Land. That is what? That has some kind of boundary. So, for example, if Mr. Kaiser says that this is my territory, it means this is my area that is recognized and I have full control over it. So, the first one we're going to look at is the unitary and the federal system. What in government, when we say the unitary system, what does it mean? Here, our focus is going to be on the ultimate constitutional authority that resides in the central national government. So, power that is written in the Constitution or that is provided by the Constitution is given to the central national government. That is, there's a central authority that controls everything. Subnational units also only exercise delegated authority. For example, we have United Kingdom, we have Japan, and we have France. So we have other countries too that the government or the president of the state takes care of everything and sub-units do nothing. So all decisions are done by the highest authority, and that power is not divided into subunits. For example, no one can act on behalf of the government with absolute power in the sub-municipal areas or the district levels. So we have countries like United Kingdom. We have countries like Japan, we have France, and usually these are the presidential kind of, states that are full-fledged powerful presidential systems. So the advantage of this is policy uniformity and clear lines of accountability. When we say policy uniformity, that is to say that I live in Ghana, and Ghana has several districts or cities, for example, and whatever that the president decides or whatever decision is made at the top level or at the presidential level of the unitary level, then it is binding on everyone within the state. So unlike in countries like United States, when some places have found it, not okay to practice the famous LGBTQ, you know, was the name right and everything they're talking about. Other states think it is within the people's right to do whatever they want. Whatever, about them or about those kind of group of people is not binding on other states. And that's exactly what you're talking about. The unitary. Everything is in what? Is together, like unitary. But then opposite this is the federal system. Here, sovereignty is constitutionally divided between a central federal government and regional unit, like states or provinces. So, like example, we have the United States, we have Nigeria. They have the United States system too, where the federal state has kind of dispersed some level of power and control among regions and states or provinces. So advantage of this is that it accommodates regional diversity and prevent the concentration of central power. As we say, or as we mentioned, that unitary system, the advantage of unitary system is policy uniformity. The advantage of federal state is regional diversity. That is, look at something, there's something very interesting there. When one says that policy brings all of us together, the other one says, no, dispersing those kind of power and giving them to, regional and, the sub-counties, rather make us develop in what? Diversity. So what comes to mind whenever you think about these two things? The first thing that comes to mind is the fact that there is an advantage in everything. If you find yourself in your home, the advantage is that you have the peace, you have everything, you need to study. And if you find yourself in the refugee camps, sorry, if you find yourself in refugee camps, it's kind of a disadvantage for you, right? A disadvantage because you're not with your family. But then if you look at this aspect of, or if you look at the other side of it, the bright side of it, being in camps should also be your motivation. That should rather give you the motivation to study. Perhaps if you were in your own home, you might slack, you might, be kind of, lazy in doing things. But then the fact that you are in refugee camps should be your greatest motivation to study hard, come out harder or stronger, and be the person you want to be. So that is a very good point, you guys. No one should forget. Okay. Now, the next one is the confederal systems. So we have the unitary system, the unitary government, we have the federal, then we have the confederal government. So the confederal alternative. Here, it is a loose voluntary union of independent sovereign state that delegates specific limited powers, such as defense or trade, to a central authority. So look at it, confederal is a kind of a mixture of the unitary system of government and the federal. So confederal. Here, what they do is that they give some kind of power to specific group of people or individuals or authorities in the state when it is needed. So the central government is inherently weak and relies entirely on cooperation of member states. So a historical example in this case is United States under the Article of Confederation, that is the early Swiss Confederation. What do you know about the early Swiss Confederation? Think about it. Because of time, I will not be able to explain much of that one. So you can think about it, you can research more about it, or as you listen to me, if you have your Googles or whatever, you can Google it and you can contribute to the discussion as we proceed. Now, So now the next subtopic is executive legislative relations. So don't say executive, because in English, when you say execute means to kill. It also has the meaning of to do something. For example, if you say that I have a plan, I need it executed. An executed plan means a plan that is being implemented. But if you say that Mohammed is a very bad boy, I'm talking about myself, Mohammed is a very bad boy and he needs to be executed. It means he needs to be killed. So you have to mention it rightly. So the word is executive. Now, so the feature of executive is that we have the executive head and the parliamentary system. Here in the parliamentary system, the executive head is the prime minister. The prime minister. Here, this is where you see the difference between who a prime minister is and who a president is. A prime minister is the one that heads a government system that is parliamentary. But the presidential system has who we call the president. In the case of parliamentary system, it means the president's veto is being curtailed. Whatever the parliament decide is what he does. Of course, the parliament come together to choose him and make him a president. That is why he's a prime minister. But then in the presidential system, the people vote for their own president. Therefore, the president has an absolute power and he is in charge. And in semi-presidential system, we have the duo that is president and the prime minister. And this tells you what some people have in different countries in the past. We used to have countries that have president and the prime minister. If you see such country, then remember that they are practicing what we call the semi-presidential system. Now, the executive, the source of power for parliamentary system is legislative majority. So legislative majority, remember we talked about the legislature, that is the parliament that makes the law. So those who form the minority quorum are the majority quorum, sorry, are the ones that form the next government. For example, Mr. Siraj or Mr. Mohammed Salim, for example, has a political party, and the name of the political party is Rohingyan Party, for example. And I also have a political party, and the name of the political party is Myanmar Political Party. What is going to happen is that we are going to, look for people who are going to represent our various communities or various constituencies, and they'll be elected. So at the end of the day, I have like 200 people who won, parliamentary seats, and they are going to the parliament. But Mr. Salim has like 400. So it's directly, stated that he has the majority. Therefore, he chooses who becomes the next president. And here, presidential system is direct popular vote. So what we call the direct popular vote is what we exercise throughout the country or throughout many countries. Who wins the popular vote leads the presidential system. So if Mr. Kaiser wants to become the president of Myanmar, he comes out, he campaigns, he goes to every person in the community. And I also want to become the president of, the same place. What is going to happen is that I'm also going to choose my people to vote to campaign, help me campaign. And if Mr. Kaiser has 500 votes, whilst I have 499, he wins the election in many cases. In some cases, he has to score what we call the 50 plus 1. Now, so the semi-presidential system has the dual mandate. You vote for the legislature and you also vote for the presidential candidate. Now, removal. How do we remove someone who has been brought to power by the parliamentary system? How do you remove someone who is following the presidential system? And how do you remove someone who is semi-presidential? The removal depends on vote of no confidence for parliamentary system. So if in the parliamentary system, if the people who vote for you, who choose you to become their leader, that is the parliamentarians, decide not to choose you again or decide to relinquish whatever power they've given you, you'll be found wanting. That is to say, you'll be removed through the parliamentary system. And in the presidential system, they have what we call the impeachment. Impeachment is also almost the same thing as vote of no confidence, but the vote of no confidence is simplistic, whilst impeachment is quite complicated. If you want to impeach a government, you have to have a strong reason to remove him. Impeachment means to remove someone from power. Then, in the semi-presidential system, we have the prime minister. He is being removed via the parliament, the president via terms. So terms here means the conditions you set aside, the agreement you have with them. So they breach the agreement, you remove them. Now, the core dynamic part of the parliamentary system is the fusion of power. You have different parliamentarians who are chosen by parliament to do certain duties. Now, the presidential system has what we call the separation of power. That's the core dynamic. Everyone has their own mandate and their own responsibility, and no one interferes. And no one interferes. That lack of intervention or interference is where, separation of power is very, apparent. Now, the semi-presidential system has a shared executive power. That is the executive power, the ministers that are, chosen by the president, they have shared executive power. Now, the regime typologies. The first one is procedural democracy. This focuses on minimal standards, specifically the presence of competitive, free, and fair multi-party election. So here we're trying to understand democracy. Procedural democracy, that is, it focuses on minimal standards, specifically the presence of competitive, free, and fair multi-party election. So one of the signs of democracy is multi-party elections. But when you have a leader that crack down or hurt opposition parties so that they become the only candidate to feature on the ballot paper, then they are tyrants. They are autocratic. Do you understand it? Therefore, that is what we call the procedural democracy. It focuses on free, fair election or multi-party elections. Now, the next one is liberal democracy. It combines competitive
Sir,
election with
I am
institutionalized
a little bit
protection.
confused.
Yes, excuse me?
Sir, I'm a little bit confused
About what?
about procedural, sir. Yeah, there are so many words procedural. Procedural uses, may I know for it is used for environments. Now, this used for democracy. So, can you explain more deeply, sir?
Procedure. Procedure is what we
Yes,
call
sir.
how things, the steps we go through to get something done. For example, I want to go to um America. Can you tell me the procedure? The procedure is how I can go to America, how I can get there.
Sir, this is kind of, sir, I hope also we can call it our memory, procedural memory, sir. Can we call it procedural memory?
That one is in psychology.
Oh, Okay, okay. Actually,
If you talk about the
I
procedural,
was a little bit confused, sir, with that. So I'm clear now, sir. Thank you.
yeah, that is in psychology. There's what we call the procedural memory. That is when you're talking about the short-term memory and the long-term memory, the SM and the LTM.
Thank you, sir, for your
That is the
time.
procedural memory. But then here we have procedural democracy. It goes through a kind of a procedure, and that is the presence of what? Competitive. It has to be free, it has to be fair, and it has to be a multi-party election. Do you understand it? And some people also call it the electoral democracy. When we say electoral democracy, some countries are not fully democratic, but then you see them, having that kind of, 4 years or 5 years, routine um, elections. We call them the electoral democracy. Apart from that, you don't see anything else. But liberal democracy goes beyond that. Here, it combines competitive elections, this is one, with institutionalized protection for civil liberties, the rule of law, independent media, and an independent judiciary. So that is what everyone is, craving right now, liberal democracy. Procedural is every time it's a kind of a procedure. It's time for election. Okay, I'm party A. I am party B. Now let's go for campaign. Oh, this party is very vibrant. Oh, it's very, active. I like them. They promise a lot. I want to join this. I want to do that. Then there will be election, and after that, the media is being brutalized. People don't have freedom to do whatever they want to do, and the economy is a problem. This is not what we're looking for. That is procedural democracy. Yes, Mr. Hafizur Rahman, do you want to say something?
Yes, sir. First of all, thank you. So
You're
I would
welcome.
like to learn one thing that
Yeah.
how a system without procedural democracy and liberal democracy can be.
Please, can
So
you say it
we,
again?
how a system how a system and the election without having liberal and protective individual rights can be.
Yes. If I understand your question correctly, procedural
Thanks.
democracy is just capitalizing on an aspect of democracy. In a democratic society, or in a good democratic society, we should have working institutions that are, working, that are vibrant. We should also have independent judiciary. We should also have the rule of law, and we should also have independent media, not stooges, not media that always report in support of the ruling government. We should have a media that is interested in broadcasting and doing some work in journalism to bring out what is really happening on the ground. You understand it? Then we should be able to also protect civil liberties. Like, these are all things that we should do in liberal democracy. But in procedural democracy, you find repeated elections, like 4 years' time, then they'll be like, we're going for election. And even during election, after the election, everything dies. People forget the government or the ruling party doesn't defend citizens anymore. It doesn't help in anything. Do you understand it? Oh, Mr. Shafiullah.
Yes, yes, sir.
Do you
I
understand it?
got your clear explanation. Thank you. The
Yeah,
water
you're welcome.
preparations
So the
around
liberal
the
democracy is quite interested in, um, adding many things to the competitive, free, and fair multi-party election. After that, we should have something else. That's what liberal democracies are saying. All right. Now, Now the regime typologies. The regime typologies. Here we have what we call the military regimes. So this is a government by a junta or armed forces council, typically prioritizing national order and security above civil rights. So this is what we call the soldier regime. Here, soldiers take over state, they rule, everyone fears them, like the situation we have. So let me ask you a question. What do you think you have in Myanmar? Do you think you
Uh,
have a
Actually,
procedural democracy or you have a liberal democracy? Or do you have a military regime?
so I think we have military regimes where we were forcibly because of their power, with their power.
Hmm.
Without military regime, there was not any power there, like dictatorship. Thank
Very good. Thank you very much. So,
Yes, sir. I want to add something here.
yes, please.
Like, as I have the experience according to my
Mhm.
country, I
Yes.
think everything and the world witnessed what they did to us. And in this point, I think the Myanmar is the liberal democracy, not procedural democracy.
Mm, I see. So
Am I
you
right,
think
sir?
you have a military regime,
Yeah.
okay? Because as I understand, your current president was once the army officer who sanctioned uh, the murder and prosecution of the Rohingyans, and now he succeeded in taking that the president to the prison as he becomes the new president of the state. So you are being ruled by a military regime. Okay. Now the next one is um sorry, I think someone has written on the screen. I have to clean it. Now, the next one is single party regime. And in many in other countries, you call them the one party system. Here, one political party is effective. The rest are almost not there. No one is even interested in them. You understand it? So that we call the single party regime. If you start a political party, you are even likely to be arrested or jailed. So personalist regimes, that is a power that's concentrated in a single individual leader with weak institutional constraint and high reliance on personal loyalty and patronage. And that is what we call personalism in political science. In political science, we have clientelism, we have personalism too. So when we talk about personalism, it talks about when one person appeals to the vote of the people. Everyone likes him. Everyone who, yeah, of course, his regime is not good. He has some problems, but then everyone likes him. And if you take him away and you ask yourself, who becomes the next president? No one can tell you because he is the face of the political party. He has very weak institutions, so he cannot even produce the next leader. So that's what we call the personalist regime. And they rely highly on personal loyalty and patronage. Now, the next one. Oh, I can't read. Okay, so here we have competitive authoritarianism. Now, it's a formal democratic institution that exists, but incumbent leaders heavily abuse state resources and the media to create a severe uneven playing field. So here, a president leads a country. He uses his power to intimidate the Electoral Commission and the court. But there is election. There are other things. So the people there might feel they are free. But then he abuses state resources and the media to create a severely uneven playing field. So that's what we call competitive authoritarianism. Of course, I've seen the same thing in my country not long ago. So number 6, you have the executive aggrandizement. What is aggrandizement? In English, when we say what he's doing it for his own self-aggrandizement. What does it mean? Who can help?